Episode 53 of the podcast. This week we're talking about mixing methods and why I don't recommend it. We'll talk about why calm, comfortable, and cooperative is the foundation of any method that I'd encourage you to use.
You're listening to the Creating Great Grooming Dogs podcast. I'm Chrissy Neumeier-Smith. I'm a certified professional groomer, certified behavior consultant for canines, certified professional dog trainer, and the owner of Happy Critters in Nashua, New Hampshire. And this, my friends and colleagues, is where grooming and training meet.
I want to start out this week by thanking all of my listeners. I just completed 1 full year of the podcast. So that's 52 weeks in a row of making episodes. And I love doing this podcast, and I am so thrilled every time one of you tells me about how you're using the information. I was able to teach at New England Grooming Show, and last month I taught at Hershey, so Groom Expo. Those two experiences have been awesome, and meeting you guys, but also having people contact me and tell me how they're doing and also asking me questions. So I got to say, the podcast has been so much fun. So here we are moving into my 2nd year. So thank you all. Now on to our topic. I know that I frequently circle back to why behavior is important and why we should keep dogs calm, comfortable, and cooperative. I know I circle back to that a lot, but I find that it's the base of the method and the types of advice that I give. It's the foundation, and without it, you won't be able to build properly. Just like the foundation of a house. If it's a little bit off, everything else is going to be a little bit off too. So let me give you an example. If you have a dog on your table who's having a hard time, who's struggling with the situation and making grooming difficult for you, first of all, even just wording it that way is a shift in thinking for many of us. That's not the way I approached it when I first started learning to groom, right? That's a very trainer-centric kind of point of view, and I want more groomers to think about that. He's having a hard time. He's struggling. He's having trouble with the situation and making grooming difficult, not because he's trying to be difficult. The situation is becoming difficult, right? But if you're using my advice and start making progress, but at the end of the day, force the dog to get something finished, you're very likely to just undo most or much of the trust that you've built. So mixing methods can be a waste of time and effort. So that's part of why I keep circling back to that core, that base, is because I don't want us wasting time. I want you guys to have a really good sense of this is working for me, or reevaluate if it needs to change, but not necessarily I'm going to give in at the end. I'll work on it a little bit in the middle, and then, well, we got to get this finished. And honestly, that's part of what made me start being my own boss, is that I worked a couple places where that was something that was happening a lot. Like I'd spend a lot of time helping this dog and then decide, you know what? I think we can leave it like that. And someone else coming along going, I know he's been struggling, but we can get it done. And just because we can doesn't mean we should. So they would say, well, we can get it done. Like we can just, hold him down, do whatever it takes. And we have ways of overpowering dogs. But in the long run, that's the scary thing. That's the thing that makes them fight with us to begin with. So if we continue to use a method that they find scary, we're not going to make progress. And so it used to frustrate me working other places, and other experiences where people were like, yeah, but, we can get it done. He wasn't so bad that we can't get it finished. But I want you to think the method we're using is about long-term behavior change and not about getting it perfect today. One of the things that I ask people is, all right, so you work with dogs who are difficult and you work with dogs that are aggressive. And, how many of you are doing that a lot? Okay, good. And how many of you are working with dogs who are your happy little customers that you look forward to seeing who used to be your aggressive dogs? Because that's what I want for you. And that's achievable. So I want you to start thinking that if I put the time in now, and abandon some of the other methods that are contradictory to what we're trying to do here. Because when we force dogs and just overpower them and overwhelm them and use like our tools and our, mechanical leverage, which is what, many of these restraints are. I'm not against using restraints. That's not what I'm saying. Like if we have to, put on a second loop or a groomer's helper or something like that, I just want us to use them mindfully and always with the idea that we're trying to keep the animal calm, comfortable, and cooperative. But we need to stay safe, right? But to use those things to overpower and to just get it done because he wasn't so bad that we really need to send him home unfinished, erodes what we've done. So there were a lot of times I was working for somebody else and I had spent a long time working with this dog, and then at the last minute, it's like, well, yeah, but he's still a little bit damp under his chin. Yes, and he's also stress drooling. It's like, yeah, but we can't let him go home like that. Like, yeah, we really can. Um, so I want you to think that there are different methods, and the method that I'm presenting to you is long-term change, building trust. And so if we think about making them get it done as a method, then it becomes a little bit clearer that, oh, that's a different method, right? And I'm not going to say I'm not trying to make a judgment call about, if methods are mean or not, but if it's scary to the dog and we have a method that isn't scary to the dog, we should pick the one that isn't scary for the dog, right? And that's part of our humane hierarchy. That's part of, humane and compassionate care. There's the codes for grooming standards. It's the humane hierarchy, which is part of our training standards. So I want you to be thinking that if we have a way to keep them calm, comfortable, and cooperative, and have them relax for what we're doing, we also can get them learning about how this isn't scary and to actively be willing to let us do all the things that we need to do for the future. So that little last bit of I have to get that bit of hair from the corner of his lip and forcing him through is never, ever worth it. If you've built up trust and you fight with them at the end, it's not going to be worth it. It's not a good way to use your time. So I have training customers ask me about other methods that they've been given, right? Or advice. And it could be great advice. It could be what I planned for them. It could be good advice, but incompatible with the method that we've chosen in this particular case with this particular dog. Because again, we're always looking at an individual, right? So we don't want to make, broad assumptions about things that we're doing, right? It could also be advice that I didn't want them to try. Maybe it would work with a different dog or work with a similar problem, but not really with this problem and with this dog in this situation, right? So even with my training customers, they ask me, well, how about this? How about this? Or I heard this, or it sounds exactly like what we're doing, which only tells me that they don't really understand yet what our plan is, what our goal is. I don't hear that one very often because I'm usually pretty good at explaining to people exactly what our plan is. But we all hear advice, especially if you go on the internet and ask for it, because everyone's got a suggestion, right? But I want you to think about if we're working on a particular dog in a particular situation with a particular problem, it is best to use one method. It's best to simplify, to use one method, to pick the one that you think is going to help this dog remain calm, comfortable, and cooperative, and to reassess and to decide, is this dog doing better? Is the behavior increasing? The behavior of calm, comfortable, cooperative that we want increasing, right? Is it staying the same? And maybe staying the same is good if it's a dog who has always been good, right? There's nothing wrong with a dog who's always been good remaining the same. That's great, you know? But I want you to think that those methods, if you pick only one, then we're not muddying the waters. Because I want you to also think as a technician, right? Did it help or not? Make it very black and white. Did it help or not? Right? When I was able to calm the dog down and back off and calm him down and back off, the third time, did he let me do it? That helped then. right? We can assess that. We can look at that. We can look at that with some clear eyes and say, you know what? I think that that helped. Right? And the thing is that an expert trainer can make almost any tool useful. But as expert trainers, we need the average non-trainer to be able to follow the advice. So simplicity is really helpful. Using only one set of advice and only one method at a time is the easiest way for someone who is not a trainer geek to get things done. And I want us all to think that overpowering dogs to get a grooming done is a different method. It is incompatible with the methods that I'm trying to present to you. If you're enjoying my podcast, please remember to subscribe so that you don't miss any episodes. Here is another example. It's a human example. It's one I use pretty often. But I want you to think about mixing methods and think about it as if you have a recipe. All right? I am not a cook. I am not a baker. I can boil water and put things in it and time it. Strain the noodles, right? I can't do any of this stuff. So to me, it's like a chemistry set to say cooking. But I want you to think that you have a recipe. And now someone's telling you, oh, but you could substitute this for this, or you could add this, or if you simply add these few things to a basic bread recipe, then you could have apple bread, you could have pumpkin bread, you could have, banana bread. And I look at those things as really overwhelming because I am not a cook, right? This is not what I do. So if anybody comes over, I remember we were camping once and it was, all right, guys, I'm making some pasta. Who would like some? And it turned into, oh, wait, I have some sausages and I have this and I have that. And we can saute some stuff up. I'm like, oh my God, you guys are killing me. No, I'm boiling water and putting noodles in. This isn't a cook fest. If you want a cook fest, I'll just make the noodles. It is not my thing, right? So if we think about training methods like a recipe, right, that we have picked out the perfect recipe or what we believe to be the perfect recipe for this particular situation, this particular dog, this particular issue, right? Maybe it's brushing tails. Right? He needs his tail brushed out and we have picked this recipe, right? And now someone else is telling you, oh, but try this, try this, try this, try this, try this. Or at the last minute adds some weird ingredient that you're like, I don't even know how this is going to turn out, right? Because if you are not a baker or a cook or someone who understands kitchens, right? Then you're looking at this going, what do you mean? I don't know how that's going to turn out. So I used to give the example of, you're making a chocolate cake and someone comes along and says, oh, you know what? I like making chocolate cake. I like cake, but I also like onions, right? So let's find out a way to add onions to our chocolate cake. And next thing you know, you're making a chocolate onion cake. That's kind of how I feel about it when people are using really harsh methods along with really, really behavior type methods. And I'm not saying harsh methods aren't behavior type methods, but they aren't necessarily addressing the dog's behavior and the dog's brain and helping the dog. They're more about getting it done. Right? So if you think about that, like we're adding onions to chocolate cake. Onions are fine. I like onions. I like chocolate cake, but I wouldn't try to mix the two. So the reason why I used to use that as an example is because I mentioned it to some friends, and my husband and some of our friends are really excellent cooks, and they all went, I think I could make an onion chocolate cake. All right. Did that just send shivers? Because it should have. Did everyone just kind of gag a little bit in their mouth? Like, ugh, oh my God, onion chocolate cake. Right. But they talked about it at length until one of them made an onion chocolate cake. I guess it was like caramelized onions and diced up into some sort of like the frosting layer in between a really moist, like, I don't know. I didn't try it. I heard it was good, right? But the caramelized onions are sweet. I'm like, oh, I cannot. No. But I want you to think that any couple of methods could be used well by someone with a lot of experience and a lot of knowledge, right? Someone was able to pull off the chocolate onion cake. And the others are still talking about how, I think I would have done it differently. Maybe I still will. Maybe I'll do it my way because I would have done it differently. And they're still fascinated by the onion chocolate cake. Oh my God, I don't know why, right? So with mixing methods, so a trainer, an expert trainer, is more likely to say, okay, I can use classical conditioning and operant conditioning at the same exact time, right? Or I can use this method and this method and this method, or I can use, primary reinforcers and secondary reinforcers. And if you guys are falling into technobabble, that's exactly the point. Because if you're not a professional trainer, if you're not a training expert, you want simpler stuff. And you don't want a whole lot of tech talk that just muddies the waters. You want something that is going to apply to that dog, which is kind of why I start talking about calm, comfortable, and cooperative, because my average customer, my average dog owner, understands what those things look like, right? I can express that to them. And if they have that goal in mind, they automatically readjust if the dog is starting to get stressed. Does that make sense to you guys? To readjust, to think it through and say, whoa, we just lost our happy thoughts. Right? This dog just lost his happy thoughts, right? So if we think about that as our foundation, and it's a very simplistic view, but that's okay. So part of what I want for professional trainers to take from some of these discussions is how to explain things a little bit differently, right? We all need ways of explaining to someone who is not a professional dog trainer, and to be able to say, all right, I am going to have you do this and this because this little guy is doing this and, blah, 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 right? Like this individual, and not expect you guys to make a chocolate onion cake, because no one expects to be happy with a chocolate onion cake. I hope. I'm certainly not looking forward to a chocolate onion cake. It'll probably happen, but it's so, the whole idea is so gross to me. So if we think about a pro can mix methods, and a pro can write a recipe for you mixing methods. Does that make sense? So if you, as a groomer or as a pet owner, said, I really want to help him learn how to let me do his nails, and an expert says, well, we can do this and this and this, and let me show you how for your individual dog, great, right? But if it's, okay, this is how you restrain him, and this is how you hold him down, and this is how you do it this way, and this is how you overpower him to get it done, which is so much of what we see in old school grooming. And I used to do it that way. And please don't go down that road. I've made the mistakes for you. It just doesn't teach them to be comfortable with it. And so later in life, they're still uncomfortable with it. But as they start getting older and a little bit frail and maybe blind or a little bit senile, right? Now they're still afraid of it. They've always been afraid of it. And now something changes in their life and in their health, and it gets worse. And I often meet dogs at that point. I meet the 14-year-old dogs who cannot be sedated for it because they're fragile. Their health doesn't support the idea of sedating them for something like grooming. And they've always been afraid. So we need to do behavior stuff then. It's never too late to try to teach a dog to be comfortable with you. And it is not frou-free, silly, wishy-washy, granola crunchy. It's good business, right? I want you to think like, yeah, this is safer for me, safer for the dog. And if we have some methods that we're always thinking about calm, comfortable, and cooperative, then we can also make sure that if we're using a method that suddenly the dog is worried about or starts losing their happy thoughts, right? Starts struggling, flatten, fight, flee. I said it right. I know last week I was stumbling over those, right? But if they start having some issues, then we can assess really pretty quickly. Something went wrong there. Let's backtrack. So because that's my foundation, I want you to think that because of the foundation, everything that builds up from it is a dog who is learning to be more confident, a dog that's learning to be calm, a dog that is learning to continuously be cooperative, right? That it's money in the savings account, and we're just going to keep building and building and building, but not mix methods unless someone is really helping you with it. And you put it through that lens of, is this going to help this dog with the 3 C's? Is this going to help this dog? And if it doesn't, reassess. Each dog is different. I'm going to give you another example. I know we're getting kind of late on this podcast, but give you another example. One of my dogs in the past was a super, super shy, sweet little princess of a border collie. And when she was learning flyball, she was trying to figure out that box turn, and she finally nailed it. And our friend Claire yelled out a woohoo, like a super exuberant woohoo. And Isa flattened on the floor like, oh my God, I'm not going to do that again. My friend Claire just went mental. Right? A reward for a different dog, right? Her Chesapeake Bay Retrievers would have been like, yeah, score. But my dog was like, oh my God. My current dogs would be like, woohoo, yeah, thanks, Claire. But that dog thought that particular reward and exuberance was scary. She flattened. She was like, I don't think I want to do that again because, our friend Claire went nuts. And our friend Claire was like, oh, I'm so sorry. It didn't even occur to me that she'd be so sensitive about that, right? Because everything has to match the dog that we are working with today. This dog in this situation. So things that might work for another dog, we have to think about what we know about the dog on our table. What do we know about the dog on our table and how they react and how they've reacted in the past? And maybe we don't know anything yet. But if we're always keeping that foundation work, why behavior is important, why the long term is more important than the trim today, why the long term is more important than the fact that we could overpower him and get him done? Because we could. We do that to dogs far more often than we should. Coming from a cow background and a horse background, we don't do that to larger animals. We need to be thinking about the reason why we do it to dogs is because we physically are able to. And we have a whole variety of tools that can help us get it done no matter what their brain is going through. And we need to think about that, be mindful of that, because we don't make great progress that way. That's not going to be a long-term solution. That's only for a minute or 2 or 5. So everybody, this week's weekly action step, I want you to think about looking at the foundation of calm, comfortable, and cooperative, and thinking about the various methods that you use or that you try or the advice that you get, and if it promotes calm, comfortable, and cooperative. So everybody, have a great week and stay curious. If you'd like to talk to me, you can find me through my grooming and training business, happycrittersdogtraining.com, my email, chrissy@happycritters.net, and through the Creating Great Grooming Dogs Facebook page. And we have these awesome devices in our pockets that allow us to do live video with each other. I can help you with the dog on your table. We can set up live lessons, and you may be surprised at how much we can get accomplished together via video. If you're ready to go beyond the podcast, and I hope you do, I've made it really easy for you. If you go to creatinggreatgroomingdogs.com and click on your next step, you'll see all of the options. There's the Scholar Lounge community, there's the Modern Grooming Professional certification, there's Master Canine Stylist and Professional Canine Stylist diploma testings, there's the Behavior Lab for coaching and private one-on-one sessions with me, and of course the Master Groomer Behavior Specialist program. So go to creatinggreatgroomingdogs.com and click on your next step.